I'd like to welcome you all to the Anyone Can Farm Experience Thursday night edition. Today is the 6th, I think, of April 2023. And we are hosting tonight the Krawczyk family. Did I get that right? Mary
Close
Ellen and
enough.
Joe. Is that right?
Yep.
Close enough. Okay.
Yep.
Close enough.
And their company name is Field and Forest. And I have experience with them since about 2006. All right. So this is kind of neat. I recognize Joe right off, because my son Joe, who at the time was probably about, maybe 12 years old. We had gone to the small farm conference here up in Gaylord, and he wanted to go to your class that you were giving on mushroom cultivation. And so I went with him. I think I maybe I didn't. Maybe he went by himself, but he was convinced that that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to do mushrooms. And so we found out that you were coming back to Michigan, I think, in maybe a month or two, and you were going to be giving a class in Mayo, Michigan. And so we hightailed it up there and took your class. And I was convinced. I mean, my audience here knows that I highly recommend growing mushrooms for your own home. And we've had a lot of fun with it. And we've eaten a lot of mushrooms, too, bought a lot of equipment from you. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Mary Ellen and Joe Krawczyk. And if you guys wouldn't mind giving your background and then lead into how you got in the business and what the business is and where the business is going, and also how your business could benefit our listening audience, because we've got a lot of homesteaders here, and we I don't know, what I do is I do a lot of different stuff. I'm not just big on one thing. So without further ado, take it away, Mary Ellen and Joe.
And we got how much time? Because that right there is going to take a couple hours.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Go ahead.
We'll give you the Reader's Digest version of everything so that we can keep it rolling here. Well, let's see. My background, I think if you want to take a look at it in detail, we could say I got into the mushroom business because of genetics. And the genetics being that I'm of Polish-American descent. And I can remember way back when, probably when I was even in second grade, I was being pulled out of class in the fall of the year to go mushroom hunting with my grandfather and dad. So, that must have left a lasting impression on me because through the years, I've always kept an interest in mushroom. And it wasn't until I went to college, I went to UW Green Bay. I got a degree in botany because I didn't know what else I was going to do with my life. And it was there that I took mycology and plant pathology, and that's where my interest in fungi really, really bloomed. It was also there that I met my lovely wife and business partner of, business partner of 40 years now.
Wow.
And we've been married 30, what is it this year? 37, I think. So we've been in business together longer than we've been married. So that's been wonderful. From there, one thing led to another, and I found myself one day contemplating what I was going to do at the end of my short-term employment with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, when an article came across my desk on the cultivation of shiitake on small diameter hardwood logs. That was written by Gary Latham at the Forest Products Lab. And that had to be in 82 that was written. And Gary was making his proclamation that shiitake cultivation in the U.S. is going to be $1 billion industry in 5 years. Well, we're still waiting. But we're glad that we've been part of that. And we continue to be part of it. And we look forward to continuing as long as we possibly can with the promotion of cultivation of mushrooms in a sustainable way on small diameter logs, locally available resources, and things that homeowners can do either for their own personal use or as a potential source of income. So I turn it over to you now.
Well, I mean, at this point, it's the same. Genetics is the same deal. My family is Polish, combo of Irish Polish, and I grew up hunting mushrooms with my Polish aunt. Mostly, I cared about stepping on the puffballs. Like, I really didn't care much about the food end of it, anything other than the fun end of it. But that was always just really interesting, and so. I met Joe at UW Green Bay, and I soon found my interest to be really on a much more microscopic level. So I was very interested in mosses and liverworts. Soon realizing that was going to require, to get any kind of, meaningful employment, that was going to require a lot more education. So I moved my schooling down to UW-Madison, where then, of course, I found I guess a greater interest in the larger scale farming systems. So I got a degree in agronomy, worked at an experimental farm and in a lab for quite a few years after I got my degree. And that was when Joe and I decided, that we were going to try to make this food farming thing work. And so we were making spawn in bathtubs for a long while when we started the business. And finally we got married and moved north, and then we kind of started the business from in a real kind of a way from there. So it's definitely been a huge part of our lives. Can't imagine ever not growing mushrooms. It gets addictive, so you folks out there that haven't tried it, just beware of that. Some of the best food you'll ever eat, and it's just gets you out into what we call the woodland workout clinic. No need for gyms.
No gym membership involved here.
Yeah. It's because it just your awareness of everything, your backyard, your natural world, just really, even though it's under the lens of mycology or growing mushrooms, it's you notice everything so much more when you're engaged in food farming or forest food farming, maybe.
Well, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's that.
Okay, so what's your family configuration like?
Well, let's see. We have a son who is 33. My word.
Yeah.
And he's doing real estate in Green Bay. And our daughter is 31 this year.
Don't push it, man.
Wow.
30.
30. She'll be 31 this year.
She's not watching this tonight, but if she were,
Wow.
I would tell you.
How time flies. So Phoebe has joined our company. She joined in 2019. And if you are on social media, like I know most people are, or so it seems, she does our Mushroom Minute on Instagram. And what else is she doing?
Well, she does all of our
videos
and our, it's of that generation. She kind of really got us more up to speed with that because, we're old school. We send out a catalog. We're one of the few companies.
We're the last company.
I think the last company that sends out a catalog that's been just sort of a mainstay of our business for all these years. People like to have stuff in their hands. It's kind of a resource guide also.
Yep.
So we've had the catalog for a long time, and it's, cataloging has gotten very expensive, what with postage, especially, and cost of paper and all those things. But it's really who we are. It's how we like to communicate. Although I think our daughter Phoebe is trying to change that. She does a lot more with. So if anyone is on Instagram, please take a look at the Mushroom Minute. We try to educate people in 1 minute's time, 1 minute every week on a new topic. So. And then of course the video channels, and I would say Phoebe's just an all around person who likes to take charge. So she does everything in our business as as a small business is. Everybody wears everybody else's hats. So
and she likes to say she's been with the business now for over 30 years.
Yeah. In many ways, she has. I mean,
Yeah.
the kids, when they were growing up, and it's interesting that you would say that, Mark, that, your son was so interested. Our kids, even they were dragged to every single, like they probably came to the small farm conference. They've been on all the forays. They've just been dragged, from pillar to post with mushrooming, Telluride everywhere. And I think that, by the time they got into college, they said, that's enough. Like, we don't want to have anything to do with you, with the business. And so, surprise, surprise, they've both been, back to, with field and forest products at different stages of their lives. And Phoebe's,
Mhm.
has really quite a huge interest in it. She loves food and she loves farming. She loves cooking. She loves mycology. So she'll definitely stick with it into the foreseeable future. Um, it's not an easy way to make a living, right? I mean,
Yeah.
homesteading and growing your own food and in making, promoting it and getting it right is a real challenge, but there's just so
Yeah.
much reward with it, I guess I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good way of life. I had a corporate job for a long time, and I much prefer this. It's not as lucrative, but it's there. I would say it's coming around.
Mhm.
The world's changing. By the way, I have 8 sons, and a couple of them aren't married. So, you might want to check out our website too, because I put up photographs and stuff like that of them. There's a couple
Well,
of them that I'm trying to
any
get
daughters?
down the road. But my second oldest son, he was involved a lot with the farm until he was about 18. And then he went to school, learned how to be a welder, went off, worked for a crane company. They wanted to put him into engineering school. My kids are all homeschooled. And he just said, no, I don't like it out here. And now he's working back for the farm in a very similar role as your daughter. He does our social media, our Instagram, and all that
Mhm.
good stuff. And it works. It really works.
Yeah,
So,
it's a really, when you think about all of that, I mean, when we started out, it was all about answering the phone. People weren't
mhm,
afraid to call. It's very interesting when, we're one of the few companies that will answer our phone, and we will talk to customers and give advice and help them out. It's one of the core values of our business. So when you call, you may get the answering machine, but that's just because everybody's talking to somebody.
yeah,
um, so it's a core value for us. It's just, part of the business is relational for us. And people have gone as far, of course, as to kind of, make the connection between that and fungi, and just the, fungi with its networking. It's very, very much like we do
Yeah.
yeah,
as human beings to develop to be successful. Fungi are successful that way too because of their relationships with plants and, microbes and soil and just how they go about getting their food. So aside from that kind of obvious connection, I guess I would say that I now have lost my train of thought. What was my original point?
Well, I
Got
don't
brain
know,
brain.
but it let's put it
it's
this
all
way.
good
In
stuff,
40
though.
years, in the 40 years we've been doing this, we've gone from writing everything down on a
Oh
piece of
yeah, that was
paper
it. Yeah, I
and
remember
losing it
too.
to putting it into a Word document and losing it on a computer. So we've
Yeah,
made really great progress here.
yeah,
Yeah, that was going to be my point about our catalog, is that in the old school way that we've done things, which we're still kind of carried over with, they're carrying that over. With the next generation that might end up running the business, we do wonder, like, will anybody ever answer the phone again? It's
yeah,
it's a time commitment. It's a skill. People have to know how to listen, on both ends of things, and so I'm not sure how long that will last in our society with um, the huge the volumes of information that's out there now with the interwebs. Like
yeah,
the amount of YouTube videos that are available now about mushroom cultivation. I mean, we never had anything like that when we started. When we started, you went to the Penn State Mushroom School.
Yep.
It was just basically get out there and do your own research.
And then you went to Steenbach Memorial Library and got all the articles you could from Japan.
Yeah, And
had
had
them,
to have them
had to
translated.
have them translated and hope that they were applicable to what you were doing.
Yeah. Which is why back in the day, when was that? We wrote Growing Shiitake Mushrooms in a Continental Climate, which was a really popular book, and it still is really applicable. I don't know, Mark, if you ever saw that. It was a little publication, self-published.
Oh man.
It,
Mhm. No.
it's really a good publication. And so what happened was when we all switched over to desktop publishing and digital, like everybody lost all the, all the hand typed files were lost. So it's been a matter of, oh God, the effort to redo that, although we are actually thinking of redoing it now after another 20 years of experience. And looking, just a lot more information that we have on commercial cultivation and wood species and all the rest of it. And then also some of the garden fungi as well. So,
Okay.
yeah, so it's just a different world. Like anybody can go online and find 1,000 videos about mushroom cultivation, but boy, there's just so much of the information is not good information.
Well,
Because there's just all of these things for the last, 40 years,
Yeah.
things that like you have to inoculate your logs, 3 days after you cut. Like otherwise your logs are done. They're I mean, just
Yeah.
things like that we've heard over the years.
There's a lot of information out there, and I got a call from someone today saying, I watched all these YouTube videos, but I really wanted to hear it from someone who's been doing this for a while, because I don't know to believe what's out there, because there's so many different opinions on how and things
yeah.
should work or how things should be done. But it's really experiences that's the best teacher, and that's what we love to share with our customers is, man, our 40 years of experience, and I tell you what, they're not all good.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, we've had some major screw ups in cultivation, but you know what? It's all part of that learning curve, and that's
Yeah.
the
Yeah, for
information we
sure.
want to pass on.
By the way, I thought I'd mention that, talking about learning, when we started out, it was, we're talking mostly about shiitake cultivation here now, but when we started out, it was a situation where you could only like the Japanese Quercus acutissima and Quercus, what was the other one?
Serrata.
Serrata. Like those were like, gosh, are our oaks anything like those oaks? And we kind of had to try to figure that out. And of course, now I would say people are interested in all kinds of wood species, and especially like when we're talking about some of the more forest management things. For example, is wood that has been infected by ash that has been infected by the emerald ash borer or beech bark disease or oak wilt. Like, can I use that wood? Can I utilize that wood if I know it's been infected or I know it will be infected? Or can I use buckthorn, which is an invasive species? Or, can I use can I use honey locust or can I use black walnut? That's a big one. And which we just don't have any black walnut hardly up here. So it's been a hard question. So to that end, we now have on our website a program called the Citizen Science page. And what that is if anyone is interested in all of these questions about, can I grow these mushrooms on this wood species, or can I questions about bioremediation or any of these things that that we just don't know because there's so many things to test. And so what we're trying to do is to get you folks out there just in small tests. It doesn't have to be statistically significant, but just to kind of give us a feeling for whether or not you can use this wood species or you can try this procedure. And so what you do if you go to the Citizen Science page, you read it, you have an idea, you submit an application, and we send you the spawn for free. But you have to tell us how it went.
There's the hook.
So we've got I don't know how many projects. We started it last year, and we've posted quite a few projects that have already concluded, but some of these are 3 or 4 year projects.
Okay.
But we've got we're trying to post all of the things that we're looking at so that, hang on to hang on, don't cut down, all your honey locusts to inoculate with Namiko, just a bunch of different wood species, a bunch of different processes out there, brewers, grains, all of those things that we get a lot of questions for about that we just don't really have the answers. And now we're finally, with the help of everybody, We're
Mhm.
getting at least a direction. We may not get a statistically significant test result, but at least we'll have I inoculated 5 logs of black walnut with chestnut mushroom, and all the bark fell off, and I don't think it's going to work. And here's a picture to prove it, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So we do have that going. So
Okay.
is interested in some of the oddball stuff, definitely check out our website. Go to it's under the, I believe it's under the Learn tabs, on citizen science, I think
Okay.
is how it goes.
Now, Jill will she will put your information in the description, so
Okay.
our listeners will be able to find it.
Yeah.
But I would like to know if you would bring us up to speed on what are the components of your business. Like what
Well,
exactly? What all do you do?
what do we do? Our primary business is mushroom spawn for mushroom growers, and that's anyone who wants to do, 2 logs in their backyard with shiitake to people that are growing on tens of thousands of logs. We service, we produce grain spawn for people that want to grow oyster mushrooms or other fungi on sterilized sawdust based media. And let's see what else we do. We produce spawn for garden crops of mushrooms like wine cap and almond agaricus. Now that's our business. Now, how do
Okay.
we back that up? Well, we do have what we call a research farm where we grow everything that we produce as spawn. So we have, I don't know, our log population has come down over the years, but we typically do about 500 logs every year. And with that, we test strains. We make sure that the strains that we are selling are living up to their word. That's what they do. And then we also, that's where we do our garden crops. So we have what is it, a 32 or 38 by 48 high tunnel where we're companion cropping almond agaricus with different vegetable crops. And there is also where we do all our research on wine cap outside.
Yeah, we've got a couple of research projects right now that are still in the works. One is and we talked a little bit, Mark, about wine cap stropharia, which is a garden crop that you grow on wood chips or a combination of wood chips and straw. You can grow it in beds, or you can grow it in your garden paths. You can grow it under apple trees. Our emphasis is, how does wine cap stropharia, benefit or antagonize things under at its foot, which is the soil, because these mulch beds are put in over the soil, and we want to know if that will improve it, or if there's some problem, because wine cap has some aspect to it that are really interesting, that the wine cap's able to capture nematodes with these special appendages that they're able to lasso the nematodes. I think that's how that works with wine cap. And also our main interest in wine cap is how quickly it decays or digests or rots wood chips to turn it into organic matter, and how does that affect the soil nutrient and then also levels, and then also how it affects plant growth. So we've been working on this now for 4 or 5 years, and so we have some research results that are also up on our website. And then the other aspect of it is how a compound, or I guess I would say an amino acid in fungi, which is in most fungi, but wine cap has a pretty decent level of it, which is a compound called ergothioneine, which is only made mostly by fungi. And so we're researching now on whether you can transfer, if there's a mechanism, or if we can transfer ergothioneine into plants. So if we polyculture or we companion plant wine cap on these wood chip beds, at the feet of plants, can that transfer that amino acid into the plants? And so, to that end, we've been working with, gosh, I guess it's USDA, on learning how, by taking plants and making sure that they have that they've been inoculated with endomycorrhizae, thinking that maybe those would be the vehicle of taking the ergothionine from the wine cap and bringing it up into the plant. So it's, we have, quite a few ongoing research projects, and another one is that might benefit all of the growers out there, is just working with different block mixes and substrate mixes for growing mushrooms on sterilized substrates or pasteurized substrates. So we're looking, pretty heavily into that, into strain compatibility, and then also different mixes, and for people that want to do indoor cultivation rather than log-based cultivation. So that was a long answer. Sorry, everyone.
Well, there was a lot of good stuff in there, a lot of gravy in there.
Keeps us busy.
FYI, last year I did wine caps, and it was the second time I've done them. I did them back in 2006 when we first started doing this, and they did okay, but not near as good as the shiitakes did. So we just stayed with shiitakes for a long time, and then last year I decided to try something different. So I got the wine caps, and they were so productive that a lot of the mushrooms were going to the pigs, because I wouldn't check them for a day, and I'd go out and they were just massive, and then I would pick, I like the little ones better for the house. So
us
they
too.
did really well.
Yeah. Well, Mark, that's a good question, because we have an employee here who raises pigs, and she said the pigs don't like them. I don't, was that your situation with the?
No, mine loved them.
Wow, pretty discerning pigs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as a matter of fact, my mushrooms are probably 10 feet from my pig pen. So we have a clump of pine trees up in the front of the property, and it's really nice and shady. Plus, it's close. So if it's way down and back and I have to hike down there to check them, I probably wouldn't do it. But where this is close, I check it every morning, because Jill makes me eggs for breakfast, and I like mushrooms in them. So my pigs made a little hole where just the babies could get out. And they went into those logs, and every mushroom that they could reach, they nipped it off and ate it. Little buggers. Yep.
Well,
they like them pretty good.
The question becomes, did it flavor the pork?
It becomes what now?
The question is, did it flavor the pork?
Mushroom flavored pork.
Right? Yeah, I wouldn't know. It just tastes like chicken to me.
Well, so one of the questions that we get from people is, gosh, I don't know anything about mushrooms. I know I want to grow them. Where would I start? What do I start with? And of course, we always go back to, well, what's your resource? What do you have available? What raw material do you have? How about you, Mark? When you started, I mean, did you like? Maybe it was your son that said, "No, Dad, we got, we have this great wood lot, and I really want to grow these shiitake on wood." I mean, if people ask you what mushroom to grow, how do you answer the question? Because there are so many.
Joe recommended. I specifically remember this because we were brand new to it, and you showed us probably 5 different methods of growing different mushrooms, oysters, and wine caps, and shiitakes. And I had a little experience with shiitakes, which I'll share with you in a minute. You really like this story, because I lived over in Japan for 4 years, so I had a little bit of experience.
Yeah, Jill was saying, yeah.
And so I think you recommended shiitake logs and wine caps, and that was what we ordered from you. And when it got here, we just made it our business to go out and find the right logs, and we did. We got them from my father-in-law. He's got a lot of maples over on his place, and we inoculated them. That first year, we got a few mushrooms off of them. The wine caps did okay, but I put them a little too far into the sun, and I think that held them back. Plus, my first year of wine caps, I used cardboard. I used cardboard and wood chips, where this last year I used straw and wood
Mhm.
chips, and then straw, wood chips, straw, wood chips. I made a lasagna. And I bet you this year all I have to do is add a little bit to it. Maybe not even for this year, but I think that's a good place for people to start. And then the question would be size of log, length of log. I remember you saying to us about a 3-foot log is what people can handle. We went with a 4-foot just because we're bigger, I guess, and it worked out really well for us. Um, but that's where I would start. That's what I would recommend to the tribe here. I'd say start with the shiitake logs. Get I don't remember what the increment is that it comes in, the spawn comes in, but one of them and one wine caps, and you're going to really get immediate results with the wine caps, like I did. And then the next year is when you're going to get a good crop of shiitakes, and they're
Yeah,
my favorite, by the way. I
well,
like them better than any mushroom.
yeah, hands
including
down.
morels. Don't
Yeah.
tell anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, really, they're not sandy.
Yeah,
No,
Morels for us are really,
yeah,
pretty sandy.
yeah. Our vision is a shiitake log in everyone's backyard,
yeah.
because it's such good food. And the beauty of shiitake cultivation on natural logs is that it's a gift that keeps on giving. One log, you say, well, do I get one crop of it? No, it's a perennial crop. And, we've had logs that have become old friends and, have hung out for 8 or 10 years before, we moved on. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's a great crop. And it's one that, like I said, everybody should have it in their backyard.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, if that class was 2006, if it was, I'm not exactly sure. I've got that stack of logs still out there, and it's reduced quite a bit. And you pick them up, and there's nothing to them, but they're
Right.
still producing. They're still producing.
I don't know. I think one thing that's gotten a lot more attention in recent years is very popular is growing the oyster mushrooms in buckets, like the 5-gallon pails that you drill holes into. Are you
Yeah.
familiar with that at all?
I've seen that on the internet. That looks pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really, and what's nice about that is um, that I mean, the mushroom industry is just loaded with plastic use. So for our end of things, we've really had to work hard on, especially with packaging. I mean, with mushrooms, it's all about moisture retention, and
Yeah.
a log itself has got this protective thing called bark, which helps it to not lose moisture, which hosts growth of the fungi underneath. And so, you're
The
gonna,
lights are on.
ouch, it's gonna hurt.
Ooh, there we
There
go.
you go.
So the buckets are really nice because they're reusable. You don't have to buy plastic and you don't have to dispose of plastic. And usually plastic for mushroom cultivation is pretty sturdy stuff. So
Yeah.
so the buckets are really nice. You just, you can find 5-gallon pails anywhere, and then you just drill, 1/2-inch holes kind of on 6 to 8-inch centers, all around it is a exit holes for the mushrooms to come out. And so stuff it with straw. We would recommend, pasteurizing the straw. So that just means putting it into a hot water bath, not even boiling, just like not even barely simmering, just heat it up pretty hot for I think it's about 40 minutes at 180 degrees. So,
Okay.
or else people use a lime soak. So they use hydrated lime, make a solution and soak it in the lime, which by the
Okay.
way, as far as disposal, it's a
Non-hazardous waste.
non-hazardous waste. So it really dilution is the solution there. Just, add
Okay.
more water and just, spread it out over, especially like a driveway or, a barnyard or whatever. But I
Throw it
mean,
in with the pigs.
those, they can be really productive, and oyster mushrooms. I mean, when we started, oyster mushrooms were almost a joke. I mean, because the wholesale price of oyster mushrooms was ridiculous. What, $3 a pound? Do you
Oh,
remember?
$3 a pound. Wow, it was like $1.25.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
everybody commercially was growing them because they're pretty easy to grow commercially, if you're, well, commercial growers would say they're not easy at all. What are you talking about? Because of course it's the next level. You have all kinds of problems once you start getting really serious about it. Um, but those are a really great project for people to start with, because at least in your state, in Michigan, Wisconsin, in the Midwest, upper Midwest, oat straw and wheat straw is available.
Yeah.
I'm shocked. When we started, I think that straw was what, $1.50 a bale, and now it's $5, $6, $7 a bale.
Yeah.
So all
Yeah.
square,
Yeah.
So, but you definitely want straw and not hay. And you just need to, soften the straw, soak it with water, pasteurize it, or do a hydrated lime soak, and then pack the buckets full with, add some spawn, let them incubate for about 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, put them in a humid environment, hopefully a little bit cooler than where they were incubating. And you've got, a good couple of pounds of mushrooms out of those buckets. And if you want to go to market, they're selling anywhere from 12 to $10 to $16 a pound.
Whoa.
So it can
Well,
be, that is, of course, what
that's with direct sales, and then of course,
direct, absolutely.
selling in quarter pound increments. My favorite story is from a guy in Nebraska who is growing mushrooms there, and he's doing his direct sales at farm markets wherever there's a farm market in Nebraska, I guess. And I said, well, hey, what are you getting per pound for your shiitake and your oysters? He said, well, I'm only getting $45 a pound for the oysters and only 60 for the shiitake.
This was just like a couple of years ago. We couldn't
Yeah.
believe it. I
Yeah.
mean, those are unrealistic prices, people.
Yeah.
For most people.
But sometimes it's hard to do the math. Well, I'm paying $15 for 4 ounces. Sounds like a good deal to me.
Yeah. I would
Yeah.
say the usual market price now, like even for like Green Bay, just not, really big city markets, is, anywhere from 12 to 16. So $1 an ounce. But, you'll do yourself good by having nice quality stuff, pick it on time. I mean, so we can talk at all, about the economics of it. And, there's a really big learning curve, because, there's a learning curve as it is with any, farm crop. And, you want to start talking about efficiency, and you also don't want to have any waste to realize the full potential. Make sure you pick on time, make sure things are kind of insect free if you can, just all those things that will contribute to a crop loss. And so if you can avoid those things, then you can do pretty well. I mean, it's once you start talking about, commercial cultivation, then the focus becomes, it's not as much fun.
Then it becomes a job.
But
Yeah.
it's daily picking. But boy, is it fascinating. I mean,
Yeah.
I think with shiitake cultivation, for all the 40 years or whatever that we've been, looking at logs, that feeling of when you walk out into the woodlot and they're the very first thing that are fruiting, like they're the very first thing growing. They're before ramps,
asparagus,
they're
yeah.
before asparagus. Yeah, they can be before morels. I mean, it's a really exciting thing, even in our
It is.
age. I mean, I can't get over the excitement of the early spring stuff.
Yep. The
It's-
thrill isn't gone.
Yeah.
No. No.
So everyone
I'm
should
with
do
you.
it. That's all I'm saying.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So tell us your Japan story.
Oh, this is great. I was stationed over there in 1985, and I was in the Air Force, and I didn't have enough rank to live on the base, so I had to live out in town. So I was living in a Japanese house. They don't insulate them, and it gets pretty cold there.
Yeah.
And so I have some welding abilities, so I built a wood stove. And I think back on it now, and it's just like those people are really petrified about fire. And
No, yeah.
the houses are real close and stuff. And here's some dumb, 20-year-old kid doing this. But I just did it. I didn't ask anybody. I just did it. So anyway, I was always on the hunt for firewood. And I didn't have a gas-powered chainsaw. They didn't sell them there. So it was always difficult to get wood. And I had a Japanese guy that worked where I worked, and I asked him how to say, I want firewood. And he told me it's easy. You just say, maki kudasai, right? So when I'd come in contact with people off the base, and as soon as you get off the base, maybe 10 minutes drive, you're in the boonies. I mean, they all live in really tight population centers. And I was going through the woods one time, and I'd have to find wood that I could carry, because I couldn't cut it out there. And I found all these logs just stacked up out in the middle of nowhere. They were all just stacked up, kind of like this, kind of like a fence. And I looked at them, and they were really nice logs, and nobody was around. Couldn't see any houses or anything. So I helped myself to them. I took about, must have taken about 20 of them, and they were 5 feet long. So it was perfect. They fit in my van perfectly. I got them back to my house. I had an electric Makita chainsaw, and I sawed them up into 16-inch lengths, and I stacked them up next to my house. And wouldn't you know, I think it was after a rain or something, but the whole stack just exploded in mushrooms. But I was not, I had been trained, do not eat mushrooms,
Right.
Don't eat mushrooms. But a Japanese woman that walked past my house every single day and never said anything to us. This time she stopped and she was looking at those mushrooms and she was speaking in Japanese. And I said, go ahead, take them. And so she picked a whole bunch of them. And I still wasn't going to eat them, but she took them home. She sauteed them, and then she brought some of them over to us. And we ate them because they were eating them. And I think we were having some adult beverages too. Me and my neighbor, we used to hang out together and have barbecues and drink adult beverages. And I ate a bunch of them. And then I started worrying that I was going to die from them, but I didn't. And they were shiitake mushrooms.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's a great story. I mean, it's interesting to see how, things have changed in Japan. Maybe Joe was just there. He and Phoebe actually visiting drill bit companies, and we have relationships with spawn producers there, and some tool manufacturers. Wonderful, wonderful businesses. We're so lucky. But maybe you can tell everyone a little bit how things have changed for the Japanese.
Well, Japan is where commercial cultivation of shiitake really got started on natural logs. And that goes back to right after World War II, when Dr. Mori came up with pure culture shiitake spawn grown into wooden pegs that could be put into logs. So there, the industry grew and grew, and then it flourished. At one time, it must have been in the 80s, dried log grown shiitake was Japan's #1 export to the world. The domestic market's always been strong for mushrooms there. And, log-based cultivation, it's traditional. And that's what you're hitting up on our tradition for firewood, right?
Yeah.
So I think the first time we went there was in 2010. And there was a tour that we just arranged through some associate who was a doctor of, he was a mushroom scientist. So he took us around and we saw everything. We saw cultivation on small diameter logs, and we saw the forestry aspect of it, where woodlots there are actually managed for shiitake logs. Specific treatments so that they can cut and get logs on a 15-year rotation, so that they sustain it that way by timber management on private holdings. Long-term leases are set up for logging. Every 15 years they come through and cut, and then 5 years after cut, they're selecting specific sprouts from those stumps for their next crop of trees. Well, this all worked really well until what happened.
This guy named Mark came and took all the wood. Anyway, sorry.
We had the earthquake in 2011, and with the Fukushima #2 reactor going down and spreading all that radioactivity, it blew into their main log producing area. So, most farmers don't cut their own wood, they would buy it in. And there's a area just west of Fukushima where all the logs are grown because it was prime oak country. Well, that essentially got shut down. So they've been hurting for wood since then. I just talked with Mr. Ayaba, he owns Fujispawn, who we deal with, and he said he finally found some logs this month in Hokkaido, and he lives south of Tokyo. So they had to haul the logs from Hokkaido all the way down south. I didn't ask him what he paid for them. He uses them for strain development and testing. So that's what he was using. So there's a real problem there with getting natural logs, to the point where they're asking us, can we export sugar maple logs? The upper Midwest, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, we have sugar maple like there's no tomorrow. And they're seeing if we can get it together to export logs to Japan. Same thing with red oak on the East Coast. Can we get it exported to Japan? So that's just in its infancy stages right now with us exploring. But, we went back in February to visit Mr. Ayaba and then the Okudas for tools. And, it's interesting to see the change in culture there. Mark, when you were there in 1985, how many green salads did you eat? You could probably count them on one hand.
Yeah.
0. We were there in 2010. Green salads, what's that?
I mean, there were a lot of good greens, but they were, cooked in pots and, hot pots and a lot of tons of greens, but never a salad like that iceberg lettuce or,
So we went back and they're eating salads. They're eating salads for breakfast. And another thing that I really noticed was dairy. A lot of dairy now. Cheese and milk. And, even 5 years ago, cheese in Japan, that was unheard of. Yeah. So they're really going through some cultural shifts there. And one of the biggest ones that I noticed, we went to Star M, who's our drill bit manufacturer. They celebrated their 100th year of business, and we were there for the birthday party. And in the meeting when we were there in 2010, it was all men. There were 3 women in that meeting when we were there in February. And the CEO of the company is now a woman. So that's a big cultural shift for them. Now, is it changing demographics? Is it an aging population? It could be a bunch of things, but that's certainly a change that we noticed. And they're trying their best to keep that traditional shiitake cultivation thing going because it's such an ingrained thing in their culture.
And of course, there's a lot of pressure from China, which they've done some pretty brilliant things with substrate preparation, I would say. But it's not the same organic. How would you characterize it, Joe?
Well, when you eat your food, you want to really be sure you know what you're eating and what's in it. And with log-based cultivation in Japan, you always knew you were getting something that was, well, I don't want to say organically grown, but grown sustainably and grown in an environment where you didn't have to worry about heavy metals and other things that come in on substrates. And that's a big concern in Japan right now. Is they're bringing in ready to fruit blocks from China, and they're concerned about what they're eating from those blocks. They're eating a mushroom crop, right? But what's in the mushroom?
Yeah.
And so we're starting to question that too here in the U.S. now, because we're seeing a lot of stuff that's sold as shiitake, labeled as being produced in the U.S., but its origins are really substrate from China that's transported over here. And then it's just fruited with the claim that it's grown in the U.S.
Yeah, because it's fruited here. The substrate is sourced and made, overseas and then brought here. And because it's fruited in our greenhouses or our grow rooms over here, now all of a sudden it's an American-made product. So it's it really irritates, I think, a lot of people that growing on substrates or logs that are sourced here, and it's hard to compete, of course.
You know, if you would have told me 40 years ago we'd be talking about this, I would say you're nuts. But here we are. Times have changed.
Yeah, you know,
I
another
think
interesting thing that comes up, you said about you know, your mycophobia when you were in Japan. Like, I'm not going to eat those. I don't, you know, who eats mushrooms really? I mean, um, you know, it's kind of a scary thing for most Americans. So this whole shroom boom that we've had, where people are really interested in foraging, and I would say that every adult person that's maybe like 10 years younger than us that has a kid that's in their 20s, like inevitably their kids are foraging. You know, they're
Mhm.
really into it, of that generation. And so that's really a really cool thing. I think it's a little for us old timers, it's a little hard to that we might have to become certified to know what mushrooms we can sell at the farm market, for example. You guys have had it in Michigan now for a couple of years. For us, it's in 2025, I think, is you have to actually take a class and get certified, basically to say that, you know, to your customers or to your to the restaurants mostly, or, you know, if it's sold on retail, that, you know, we know what we're selling. You can trust us. We're not going to sell you anything poisonous. And I think, you know, certainly that's legitimate. But for us old timers who've been hunting mushrooms for a long time and grow them outdoors, that's just, you know, there's a lot of head shaking about that. But it does bring to the point of every time I try a new mushroom, I'm pretty sure I'm going to die. So I'm, you know, 12 hours passes, 24 hours passes, 48 hours passes, because, you know, some of these mushrooms have really delayed action, that they actually don't start to really work on killing you until, you know, a couple of days after you've consumed them, then when you've kind of forgotten about them. So, you know, so I'm kind of with you that I'm still really paranoid when it comes to a mushroom, even if I know that's a lobster mushroom, you
Yeah.
know, or I know that's a namiko that I've grown. I know it. I know it. But here I am. I'm still in the back of my mind going, gosh, you know, is it safe? And it's so funny because I think that, you know, that's still in the minds of a lot of people. That's one of the biggest questions
Oh
we
yeah.
get. How do I know, will this log that I'm planting my shiitake with, will it produce a poisonous mushroom that might kill me? Like, that is, I mean, we get that question almost daily. Less so
Yeah.
now than we used to.
Yeah,
But
yeah. There's another thing that's changed too, is that, you know, people in the States have gotten really used to having a wide variety of mushrooms available to them now. And I think that that fear of fungi, that I'm going to blame on our British heritage, you know, that came over here. It seemed like that's slowly being eroded. You know, we've gotten more ethically diverse in the U.S., so we do have a bigger consumer base now that's more aware of fungi and the good uses in cooking and also for medicinal purposes.
well, and there's nothing but a little fear that will stimulate to learn. I mean, um, just to answer that question, I don't know if you've ever seen anything on your shiitake logs that you ever questioned. You mean, we ever looked, you know, there's a couple. There's the fawn mushroom, which is a wood decay fungus, and it also is a white rotter, just like shiitake, but, you know, it's usually on kind of wood that never really took. It would never really got colonized by the mushroom, not poisonous, but you still want to know what it looks like. Actually, I had a guy that said, okay, you identified these as fawn mushrooms. So I took them home and I sauteed them in, you know, and I put in a splash of wine, and then I put a dab of butter in, and my wife and I ate them. I'm thinking, oh my God, I've never dared to do that, even though I know that fawn mushrooms are totally fine. But I've
Yeah.
never, you know, I'm one of these paranoid types. And he said they were actually okay,
Yeah,
not
that's
great, you know, like, and especially they were kind of old and flabby. So maybe if you got them young, but I'd much rather grow a shiitake. You know, so I would say there's one mushroom on super old wood, the Galerina autumnalis, or I think that name has changed now. But that would kill you. But you, by the time that invades in your logs, you know what a shiitake looks like. I mean, would you ever, Mark, yourself now after picking shiitake for years, do you think you'd ever question, like, would you ever not know what wasn't a shiitake? I probably didn't word that right. I mean, do you ever worry about any of the mushrooms that you pick on your
No.
shiitake logs?
No. I don't worry about the ones on my logs, but the ones out in the field.
Yeah.
I got a bad one once.
That's all it takes.
Yeah. It scared the daylights out of me.
Yeah. I mean, most of the mushrooms, like there's only a very small percent that are actually, deadly poisonous. And we kind of know those families. We know about, amanitas and, you probably should know about galerina. And if you go to our website, we have, some videos and some, blogs and pictures and things. And I mean, it's just so very different than the shiitake. It's tiny and it's wiry and it's, usually grows, just it has a very different growth. And once you start harvesting your shiitake, there's just no doubt of what that is. So I think people learn really quickly, but you also learn that if you do have a bad experience, I mean, generally it won't kill you, but you sure don't ever want to entertain that it might or worry about it that it might. I mean, those 48 or 64 hours after you ate them, thinking, oh my gosh, when is the symptom going to happen? When am I going to start not feeling well? So
did you ever get a bad one?
Never.
Never.
No.
Never.
I mean,
see, and I've had training, survival training, and the last thing that you eat, the last thing is a mushroom. As a matter of fact, they recommend you don't eat mushrooms, no matter where you find them. You might think you're an expert, but they tell you you can die from it. And I got really cocky. When I lived out in Montana, I had a friend that pretty much lived on the river. He didn't have a home. He was he just lived, he fished and he hunted and he, foraged. And he turned me on to these, he called them meadow mushrooms.
Oh.
And we ate lots of those, along with asparagus and fiddleheads and many things that he had figured out that he could eat. And when I got to this farm in Michigan, meadow mushrooms I saw, and I ate one, and my son ate one, and they didn't taste the same. So I swallowed some of mine, but then I spit it out and I said, no, I better not. And by the time we got back to the house, we were going out to eat with my wife's parents. I started sweating and I got tunnel vision.
ooh.
And we were on the way to the restaurant and I was like, you better take me to the hospital. And instead of that, I said, you got to pull over. And I had drank a Mountain Dew. So I threw that up and the mushroom. And by the time we got into Cadillac, I was like, hey, I feel fine now. So we went out to eat. Nothing came of it, but it scared me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have no idea what it was.
What a great lesson to learn. I hate to have people learn the hard way, but that happens. And I'm really glad that we were able to share that information with people. What I always say is that people ask me, well, what's your favorite wild mushroom? And I say, well, I really like king boletes, or I really like maitake. And that's really about it, because, we can cultivate some of the best edible mushrooms in the world with very little effort, and you always know what you're going to eat is going to be good. And because you grew it, it's going to be fresh. It's like, why bother? Granted, chanterelles, we'll go and hunt chanterelles, we'll hunt morels. And, that's just a way for us to get out in the woods and enjoy the surroundings that we're around. It's mushroom hunting really is a great reason to go outdoors and explore your local forests. The consumption part, yeah, okay, you can do that.
Well, I think the ones that you really become familiar with, like chanterelles, there's really nothing quite like those. Their color, their aroma, it really does smell like apricots. I would say that one and
chicken of the woods. How can you mistake that for anything else?
Yeah, I mean, so it's fun, and I think especially for people that are just learning, it's really exciting. Just like foraging for plants, like it's free, and it's a really great thing. I think we're all learning so much more about our natural environment than these specialized focuses that we had when we were when we were, younger, 20 somethings. There just wasn't the resources out there. Now there's mycological clubs and people, it's cool now. And people go out foraging and they really, the younger folks, they want to know. It's not like they're, they want to understand and they want to learn it. And that's really good for the mushroom industry in general. Cause, also they're going to have much more appreciation for any of you guys out there that want to actually grow some. Let me tell you, if you've grown a shiitake and then you stop growing it, if you go to a farm market and somebody's selling log grown shiitake, you're going to appreciate it. You're going to know what went into it and you're going to buy them, so I think it's, it's all good. We don't have this like, still the demand, is outstripping the supply, I guess to say. Most farmers markets still do not have mushroom cultivator there, or any fresh mushrooms to be had. So I think that it's a nice crop to get involved with, I think, and it sure makes you appreciate mushroom cultivation. It makes you less afraid to eat them. You start to explore them as an actual entree, as a vegetarian or vegan dish. There's a lot of different colors. It's all really good stuff, I think, for the mushroom world now. And so we've been very much appreciating the shroom boom, I guess you'd say.
The shroom boom.
We've only been waiting 40 years.
Yeah. Yeah, we really enjoyed it.
Oh, this has been great. We're at our 1 hour point. This is usually where we cut you guys loose. I wonder if anybody in our listening audience has decided that they wanted to be cultivators. Do you guys do consulting?
We'll certainly answer people's questions over the phone.
Okay.
We'd be happy to do that. That's been part of our business model since we started. On-site consultations, no, we don't get too excited about that. But we do have people that will do that. So, if you have any questions about mushroom cultivation, by all means, give us a call.
Yeah, I think, now with the interwebs the way it is, the picture can speak 1,000 words.
Sure.
So, we can get a long way into consulting just by, lending a helping hand, over the phone or over the internet with photos.
Mm-hmm.
No dollars exchanged.
And and because we're both old timers, we really prefer phone calls rather than email.
Yeah.
Or a combo.
Oh, for sure.
Or a combo.
For sure.
Yeah.
I have really good luck with consulting, just in what I'm doing. A short period of time. I've been doing this for 20 years since I retired in 2004. And I do a lot of telephone consulting, and it works out really well now with the interweb, like you're saying.
Yeah.
All righty. I really appreciate you guys going on. It's good to coming on. It's good to see you. I wondered if I'd still recognize you. That was a lot of years ago.
Is your son still interested in cultivation?
The son that was with me is the one that does our videos.
Okay.
Right. So if you go on the Anyone Can Farm Experience YouTube, there's just a list of videos there of all the things that we do. And it's like the shroom boom. We also have a homesteading boom going on too.
Right.
The same group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And we do a lot of different types of classes here right on the farm. Back then, when I went to your class, I didn't do any. It just kind of started up, and we've fueled it. We've given it some of our time, and it seems like there's let's see. Joel Salatin said this to me. He just wrote his next book, and it's something, and the homesteading tsunami. So he's identified that it's coming, right? And I guess we're just in the right place at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
So we
There's
see a lot of these 30-year-olds that are motivated, and I'm not exactly sure, because I'll question them and I'll say, why are you wanting to do this? Because I remember when I got out of the service, I knew why I wanted to do it. It's because I'd been to the third world countries, and I realized that American lifestyle was it was make believe. We were getting all wrapped around the axle about Corvettes and I don't know,
GTOs.
Dallas and Dynasty and all this stuff, where in the third world, they're concerned with sustenance. And I could see that our society was slipping. And the more it slips, the more I feel as though sustenance is going to be good enough here coming up soon. So that's why we got into it.
You know, and that's why people should be growing mushrooms. It's all part of it. You know,
it's a cool thing. I know we're past our time, but I can't tell you how many inoculation parties are going on out there right now. You know, people buy supplies, they get together in a group, they buy stuff bulk discount, they help each other. I mean, it's sort of like, the old style barn raising, which I've never been to, but I can only imagine. People are it's a really good vehicle for people helping each other out and learning from one another. And that's something that I feel like we've really gotten off the track with, the idea of community and family. And so I feel like in your line of work here and ours, it's, I think that, we're definitely facilitating some of those things that I think that we've missed in the last 40 years. So I
agree.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Along those lines, whenever you're taking a long journey, you make course corrections. Like when we go into outer space, let's say, we have to make corrections because things change. And I think our society, some people are giving up on it already, and I'm not ready to do that. I think we just need to make corrections, and something like an inoculation party is sort of like a hog butchering class or weekend or whatever we're going to do, or a cow butchering class. It does bring people together, and they find true joy in that, and true wealth in that. And like our logs, we probably do about 10 a year, every other year, something like that. I'm going to do 10 this year. I did 10 last year, or I did 15 last year, but we gave some of them away. But I kind of feel like once it's done, it's an investment that pays me back, and it pays me back really well. I think farming's a pretty good paying gig, in my opinion.
Yeah.
All right. Any parting statements here before I cut you loose?
No, it's been a pleasure, Mark.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
It has.
The best of everything to you and your community in the future, and we can all grow together and make this place a better place to live.
I like the sound of that. And Joe and Mary Ellen, if you go to our website, we have a thing called Tribe Day that we do in July 8th. This is going to be our third annual. So all these people that are in this Anyone Can Farm tribe, we open up the farm and let them come and camp. And we went from 1 day to 2 days, and this year it's going to be 3 days.
Wow.
Because we're doing like skill sharing. So it'd be a real good fit for you guys if you wanted to come over to Michigan. We'd love to have you. Well,
there's just this big pond in the way. That's the only thing that's preventing us from.
Yeah. Well, they get this ferry you can get on.
There used to be.
There is.
I'm thinking to Door County.
Yeah, the Badger.
Actually, we're going to be in the Lower Peninsula for a wedding.
But that's at Memorial.
That's Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah. And I'm actually from the Lower Peninsula, so.
Whereabouts in the Lower Peninsula?
Oh, the suburbs of Detroit.
Okay.
So I was from Birmingham, Michigan, and then, after, I was most anxious to not be in Birmingham by the time. So moved to Wisconsin, but I love Michigan. I love the UP, and the Lower Peninsula is absolutely beautiful. You don't have in the cities are fine and everything, but man, Michigan's a really great state. I'm proud to say that I'm from there. Really.
Yeah. Well, when you go home, do you go up through the UP? Do you go through the UP to go home?
Yeah, because we certainly want to avoid Chicago.
Yeah.
Up and over is the only way to go, rather than down and around.
Yeah.
Well, you'd be going right past our place if you want to stop. We got a nice campground. We could certainly feed you dinner. You think about it. Invitation's open though, for sure.
Well, thank you. And I know the food would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's real good.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Okay. Take care.
Have a great
Good night.
evening.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that was cool. That was cool. What cool people. It's almost like every year that I have collected mushrooms and made mushroom logs and thought about that class that I went to that Joe gave, and me and my kids have done, we've got this discipline down and we've shared it with lots and lots of people. I always think of those people. And I remember I had a catalog for a long time, and it seemed like they had a pretty good sized group that was all working together, inoculating logs. And I've never forgot that. I think I still have it around here someplace. But that was great. Let me break this down a little bit, because I don't know as we actually gave a recommendation. I don't know if we actually did that. But if I were you and you wanted to do what I did, I believe that I took Joe's recommendation when we went to the class over in Mayo. And we went out and cut sugar maple logs, which seems to be the best. But, you know, I'm going to go to their website and I'm going to educate myself a little bit more. We got logs that were somewhere around 8 inches in diameter, 8 or 10 inches in diameter, and we cut them at 4 feet, and they were manageable. And then you drill holes in them, and if you go to their website, you can get the bit that you can put in a 4-inch angle motor that makes it really quick. And you just make those holes, and then you pass the log over to the next guy. And the holes, let me give you some idea. I can fill in some of the blanks, but I'm sure over on their website you can. You space these out about 8 inches. And then you go like this. And then the spawn that we used came in sawdust. And I remember that being the recommended. They make another one that comes in a plug, a wood plug, and you can just hammer it into that hole. I did that one year. Didn't work as good as the sawdust spawn. And the spawn comes in bags. I don't know, it's a couple pounds, not very much for what you're getting. I mean, it's an investment in your homesteading operations. So there might be more than you would need for one homestead. So like Mary Ellen said, it's a good idea to get together with a bunch of people. The logs, I remember you want to cut the logs now, right now, while they're still dormant, either now or in the fall. And then you want to inoculate them within about 10 days, as if I remember correctly. We've done that, and it's worked out really good, so I'm going to stay with it. I got a story to tell you, though. I think it was the 3rd year that we did logs, and I don't know what I was thinking, but I had bought firewood, and the guy called me up and he said, well, I got some small diameter stuff. Are you interested in it? And I said, sure. You know, so I wouldn't be splitting. I'd just be, and they were all about that big. So I was just cutting them, and, you know, I got a semi load, and I picked a few out that looked good to me, but they were dry. It was last year's wood, and I inoculated them. I did about 10 of them, and I stacked them up. They didn't do anything. Nothing. Not a single mushroom. and I had done a real good job of identifying the end of the logs. When we put the spawn in them, we daub paraffin on there to keep the spawn from drying out. And so we'd done a really good job, but they never fruited. And I never did anything about them. I thought, I finally realized that I was using dead logs, and the mycelium is not going to run in that dead log. And so I just thought, well, I'll cut them up for firewood one of these days. Well, because they were out of the way, I never did cut them up. And last year they started fruiting. So it was about 4 years and they started to fruit. Imagine that. So I'm glad I didn't do away with them. They're not as good as my other logs, but they're still going pretty good. And then there's a method that you can use called forced fruiting. And I just started doing this last year because last year was kind of a bad year for mushrooms for some reason. I don't know why. But we just weren't getting the mushrooms that we were accustomed to. And so I put a trough out there and I would put as many logs in it as I could. And then I would have to turn them over. And so they would be in there for about 48 hours. And then I'd put them back on the pile, or I'd create a new pile and I'd put some more in. And then they started to fruit really well. So I never have done this for selling them, but I think you could. My entrepreneurial ears were hearing, oh, the Japanese are having a problem. So that means mushrooms at the store are going to be more expensive. Aha. So that means you could do better with them. That's what my entrepreneurial ears were hearing. So it might be something to look into. I haven't looked at their website, but I'm going to. I want to get smarter about this. I haven't done oyster mushrooms, but I'm going to. Okay, so here we go. We're going to go back to Tribe Plus. If you are a Tribe Plus member, then you get a discount on things from Field and Forest because they're giving a coupon. Okay. So sounds good. So Sonia in Michigan says we grow shiitake and oysters, looking to add the wine caps. We really enjoyed the wine caps after using them when we were at your place. Oh yeah, that's right. Oh, there was a good question here. How do you prevent the little pin type worms in the ribs on the oysters? That would have been a good question. Donnie Mono, late to the party, but I made it finally. Okay. We didn't have a big crowd tonight. There must be something going on. Okay, I thought that was a great interview. I'm ready to get to it. Appreciate it, everybody coming by. Another point to think about with mushrooms is forest management. So, oh yeah, it was actually Joe that I got this from. When I got out of the service and we came here, we didn't know anything about forest management. I'd never talked to anybody about it, never knew anybody that was into that. And in that class, I remember him talking about forest management. And when people have a woodlot, a lot of times they feel as though, well, I want to cut the big trees down in order to let the younger trees get some sun. And he explained that that's actually a really bad idea because your big trees are not nearly as big as they could be. And you want to let them get to be as big as they possibly can because there's a lot of benefits from a really big tree. A tree that is, let's say, 16 inches at the base could someday be 50 inches at the base, and it's a very valuable saw log. And that can happen, when trees are growing, they're putting on a lot of wood late in their life because the rings are, they're that much bigger. So there's a lot more actual wood being put on. So what you want to do is you want to cut the small trees down, the intermediate sized trees that are not getting the sunlight that they need to become a big tree because they're in the shade of this big tree. You want to cut them down and use the logs that are 6 or 8 inches in diameter to make shiitake logs out of. The tops, we know now that the last, the 2-inch pieces out to the tip, you want to chip those up and make tea out of those chips because there's a lot of growth hormones in the tips of those. We learned that from Craig's shop. So from the 2-inch pieces out to the tips, there's a use for those. After you've made tea out of them, you put them in your pig pen because your pigs will eat them. They'll actually eat them, and they'll get those growth hormones. And then you rig up a tank on a trailer or in the back of a pickup that you can put that tea out on your hay fields, and you'll really get a boost for your hay. And now with this technology, you're finding out that there's something that you can do with the logs that are from 8 inches down to 4 inches or down to 2 inches. You can make shiitake logs out of them. And then anything that's bigger than that, that's not big enough for a saw log, you'll use firewood. You'll make firewood out of that. So you've got uses for the trees that are a little bit smaller than the big massive trees. That's a good way to manage a lot. Also, when you cut them off right at the level of the forest floor, they will sucker from there. And that is a technology known as coppicing or coppicing, and will grow very, very fast. And then you can cut those off. So let's say they get to be about this big and you've got this bush going out there. You can cut that off. And if you're willing to go through the steps to build a rocket stove mass heater, you can use those coppice logs for fuel. It's very, very efficient. Okay, so there's lots you can do. But I've always thought saw logs or shiitake logs were the way to go because, just because I like eating them. And it is really fun when you walk down there, especially if you got a rain during the night. You walk down there to your mushroom area, to my mushroom area, and I've got all these mushrooms growing all over the logs, right? So I'll take my t-shirt and I'll kind of make like a pouch, and I'll go through with my knife and clip them off and put them in. Really fun. Then bring them up to the house. What we do, sometimes there's little bugs in them, and I'll just fill up something with water, cold water, and I'll put some salt in there and stir it around so it's really well, and then put the shiitakes in there, and the bugs come right out. And then you just skim them off the top. Actually, what I'll do is I'll just run more water in, and then they flow over the side and down the drain they go. I don't know what kind of bugs they are, but I'm not interested in eating them. So that was good. That was a great interview. It's good to see those guys. It really would be cool if they stopped by here. Be really nice. Like to up my game as far as growing mushrooms for sure. Okay, you guys. Appreciate everybody coming by. Do us a favor, like, share, give us the thumbs up on this one. Small crowd tonight. I'm really surprised. And if you are not a member of Tribe Plus, get in there and join. Okay, we'll see you. Remember, anyone can